This afternoon in the White House briefing room, an extraordinary sight. John Bolton, Dan Coats, Christopher Wray, Paul Nakasone, and Kirstjen Nielsen. Now, one reading of that picture, you're looking at the front line of defense of America's election infrastructure and, in fact, of the democratic process itself. Or, on another reading, you're looking at a 5-person janitorial crew carrying their mops and brooms, trying to clean up the lingering toxic spill that was Donald Trump's disastrous news conference in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin. But no matter how you see them, the message they delivered today was important and in some ways welcome for its candor, that Russia still poses a serious threat to American democracy and to the upcoming midterm elections, and that this administration is committed to stopping it. Just listen to this warning from FBI Director Chris Wray and Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats.
Our focus here today is simply to tell the American people we acknowledge the threat. It is real, it is continuing, and we're doing everything we can to have a legitimate election that the American people can have trust in.
Russia attempted to interfere with the last election and continues to engage in malign influence operations to this day.
They stepped up their game big time in 2016.
Our adversaries are trying to undermine our country on a persistent and regular basis, whether it's election season or not.
We continue to see a pervasive messaging campaign by Russia to try to weaken and divide the United States.
The reality is it's going to take all of us working together to hold the field, because this threat is not going away.
Now, was that so hard? You can imagine a president who said exactly the same words would have satisfied an awful lot of people, but of course he hasn't. A reminder, here's what Donald Trump has said, what he did say when he appeared side by side with Putin.
My people came to me, Dan Coats came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties.
Now, you'll remember, this cleanup effort today was not the first cleanup effort. The first cleanup effort was Trump's cleanup effort. He cleaned that one up, or tried to clean it up, and then he walked back the cleanup, and then he tried to clean it up again, and he walked that back, and a lot of cleanups, a lot of walking back. We don't know really where he stands. But as far as his actions go, not just his words, here's all we've seen. One meeting of his National Security Council that lasted less than an hour, in which Trump delivered no orders to repel Russian interference. With us from the White House, NBC's chief White House correspondent, Hallie Jackson. And joining me at the table, Phil Rucker, White House bureau chief for the Washington Post. Love Phil. Clint Watts, former FBI special agent and now a senior fellow with the Foreign Policy Research Institute, and New York Times political correspondent and reporter, the one and only Nicholas Confessori. Guys, great to see you here. Hallie, I called on you. You were on the phone. You were reporting.
Sorry, I know. I'm sorry. I just was on the phone.
I said your name, and I looked up, and there you were on the phone doing the hard work of journalism.
Don't show me. Go to somebody else for 1 second. No, only because, John Heilman, it's you and Nicole, and I want to make sure we're getting hot, fresh scoops right out the can.
So give it to us.
Yeah, so here's the deal. So the question, right, is how did this come about? Because that 5-box, to use a TV term that you showed at the top of the show, is striking. It is remarkable. As my colleague Peter Alexander said earlier today, in his 6 years covering this building, he hasn't seen anything like that before. This, what you can only call a show of force. And I will tell you that when the 5 of them stepped through the briefing room doors just behind me here, people sat up real straight in the chairs in the briefing room, because, again, this is significant. This is a moment when the White House clearly wants to come out and get on offense. So my conversation is, why today? What's going on today with this? And I will tell you that this seems to be something that the White House had happened from, and I'm still working on some of the source reporting on this, that this was something that these folks wanted to be able to share publicly here. I can tell you for sure the White House has been frustrated with the narrative that has been out there, that they are not doing enough to fight election interference, to fight foreign actors messing with our democracy. The president just had his first National Security Council briefing on this last week. It was only a matter of days ago. And so this is a way, in a sense, to be able to combat that, right? To come out and say, look at everything we're doing. You can't run headlines and say we're not doing enough, because look at these 5 people. But here's the thing, John. There's a whole cottage industry of distraction folks who say, well, this was a distraction from X, or this was a distraction from Mueller. I am not so sure that was the case, only because there's a lot of fires that are happening right now around this administration. The Robert Mueller, Paul Manafort, special counsel, Jeff Sessions fire series is one of them. There's also the election interference fire, right? Big deal. Yeah. And I had multiple conversations this week alone with top folks over on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue on the Hill in both parties. And one consistent theme that I heard related to election interference was leadership starts at the top. I asked point blank somebody, who do you talk to at the White House? Who do you talk to at the administration? They said, nobody. We don't know. We don't know who the point person is. We don't know what their strategy is. And this is somebody who is at a high level over there. So this seemed to be a way of the White House coming out to be able to say, we got this. We are working on this. But, John, if it was a janitorial crew, as you described it, which probably doesn't do justice to the high level of folks that we saw in the room here today, to be fair, there were some more messes made, frankly. Like, for example, Dan Coats saying point blank he is not in a position to fully understand what happened in that summit in Helsinki we were just at a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Yeah.
He's a director of national intelligence.
Yes, these are some very high-level folks. Phil, I want to ask you, I mean, at my building at least, we have some very high-level janitors too. So, like, you can be a high-level official and be a janitor, at least in the political context. I'm curious if you have a sense of, like, why today? Why it's after there have been lots have gone on since Helsinki, but today, out of nowhere, this extraordinary tableau. Do you have a sense of why? What the timing tells us?
I think Hallie's right about the frustration in the White House. I felt it too. I've been over there reporting earlier in the week. They're frustrated with this media narrative that the president's not being tough on Russia. Of course, he's not being tough on Russia because we all watched with our own eyes what happened in Helsinki when he stood next to Vladimir Putin. But there's also a real legitimate concern that this is a serious danger, that there is a threat. Claire McCaskill's emails were hacked. We know that, or attempted to be hacked by Russians. There's all sorts of other examples of interference that might be underway that the intelligence agencies have been trying to ring the alarm bells about on Capitol Hill and in their public comments, including Coates' interview with Andrea Mitchell a week or two ago. But they've not had this sort of a platform. But it's a classic case of the administration being out of step with the president, because the president hasn't said any of this.
So, Clint, I want to ask you, because this is really your forte and right in your wheelhouse. I watched this press conference, this briefing, and I saw a bunch of people saying it's Russia. The Russian efforts to try to hack our democracy are real. They're still trying to do it. Maybe not as much as they tried to do it in 2016. The efforts may be a little bit less than in 2016. And basically, we got it. We're on it. We're doing our best. But that's about the level of detail that we got here. So what's your takeaway from this in terms of the substance of what's actually going on? And should we actually take comfort from what we saw? Or does this just look like window dressing?
I think it's a first good sign. This is a press conference that should have happened in February of 2017. I mean, the whole attack is to undermine American confidence in election systems and the vote and democracy. So they are doing essentially what they pledged to do in their positions. I am going to serve out my role. Now, the problem with this is Director Wray said, this is what's happening in my agency. And then they sort of alluded like, well, we'll kind of coordinate amongst ourselves up here. This is not how you run a strategy to counter Russian interference. It comes with a mandate. It's the president who's the leader. It's the national security staff that coordinates it. The NSA director basically said, we will launch a counterattack. He sort of put that on the table today. That's unheard of in cyberspace because we're more vulnerable than any other country in the world. What if we do that? Are the other parts of the government prepared? Is Wall Street prepared for a financial attack? Right. Is our infrastructure ready? This is a really, it seems like the parts know what their missions are and what they should be doing, but no one at the top is really putting the pieces.
All right, so I just listened to what Hallie Jackson said. I listened to what Phil said. I listened to what you said. All of them raised the fundamental question, right? You're frustrated with the narrative. You actually want to solve the problem. You want to be able to coordinate things. You need a mandate. All of that. It's really easy to solve that problem. You have the President of the United States take the bull by the horns and go out and lead on this. Why is it that these 5 people can get out and say this stuff and Donald Trump still either can't or won't?
That's the big question. The easiest thing to do if they want to signal how serious they are about this is do what any other president or lawmaker or politician would do in their place. The president would come out to that rostrum and he would say, here's our 5-point plan for stopping Russian interference in the election. They didn't do that. And the only conclusion you can draw is they can't do that because he won't do that. And I don't know why, and that's what the Russian investigation is basically for. You would think that at this moment, when the president is being investigated on suspicions that he or his people were colluding with Russia, that they would take pains to be aggressive when it comes to our own intelligence agency saying we're under attack. And yet, even at this moment, they have chosen not to do that from the top.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.